Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Future-Proof Your Regulatory Submissions for Global Compliance. Thank you for joining us. We're just letting a few more people join in. We'll start the presentation shortly. Okay, welcome everybody. I see there's still a few more people that are coming into today's webinar. We don't have a lot of time though today, so I will go ahead and jump into the housekeeping slides. So upon entry into the webinar, your lines are automatically muted. If you happen to have any questions during the webinar, please go ahead and add them in the chat box. Normally this is found to the right of your window. Any questions, we will try to answer them after the webinar. If we're not able to get to your question, we will follow up with you afterwards via email. And of course, the webinar will be recorded and we will send out that recording to you.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Kate. So we'll get started here today with some introductions. My name is Peter Muller. I'm the director for North America for Schlafender Hase, and I'll be one of your presenters today.
And hello, I'm David Wilson, Senior Account Executive with Reed Tech Life Sciences. And I'll be joining Peter through our 30-minute whirlwind.
Excellent, excellent. So we have, so Schlafender Hase, what we do is we provide a tool to be able to compare content, so text and graphics, between two different documents, both in format and layout, and identify any deviations.
Great, and Reed Tech, much like Schlafender Hase is a industry leader in their space. We are an industry leader in the preparation, process management and submission of structured product labeling, XML, for both the pharmaceutical industry, EDRL compliance with the US FDA, soon to come Health Canada, as well as global unique device identification for the medical device industry.
Excellent, and we have a fairly busy agenda today. The topic that we're speaking about is honestly a massive topic. We could probably spend hours on any one of these points. The goal today is really to provide you a high-level overview and some kind of keys that we've seen in this space, and how you can get better at managing your information and basically future-proof yourself for changes that are coming. So 3 key topics we're going to talk about today. As a disclosure here, we don't provide any of the services or any of the solutions that we're going to be talking about. So you'll see in our first poll slide that's coming up. But we do work with both regulatory bodies and with customers that are performing submissions. So both of our organizations, Schlafender Hase and Reed, have learned some important lessons in this space. And we're just trying to share some of that knowledge today. So Kate, if you could please launch the first poll question that we have.
Yes, of course. You should all now be able to see that up on screen. We look to be about done. So we're at give it a couple more seconds and I'll close this up. And here we are with the results.
Okay, I can't see the results, Kate.
Oh,
David, can you?
I saw them briefly, but there we are. Can you see them now, Peter?
No, I can't, but if you could perhaps discuss them.
Yeah, so a lot of what we see, so about 10% of our attendees are looking to implement artwork management solution, about 30% a RIM solution, about 40% a labeling solution, and then 63% falling under that regulatory artwork and labeling tools implementing.
Okay, excellent. So we'll jump straight into you know, the current landscape. Let me organize my windows here. There we go. Okay, so currently we have, let's go back one slide. There we go. Sorry about that. So currently, you know, the drivers we have in our industry are regulation, obviously. There's the industry standards. We've got regulatory information. So we can see here in the chart all of the factors that go into you know, our entire process here. So we have all the information that's coming into the core labeling. Then we have further information that gets put into the local labeling. And then actually goes in and out to various different organizations or departments within the organization. And then we have the exchanges with the health authorities. And so what we've seen is kind of, you know, fractured solutions where somebody might have a RIM system, but it doesn't talk to the artwork management system. Someone might have an artwork management system and it doesn't talk to labeling. And then you have maybe LIMS at the very beginning and at the very end for managing your clinical data, and then also for any laboratory testing things that you might be doing on site at the manufacturing facility. And so it's kind of an ad hoc approach where all these tools have been put in place and they don't really speak to each other. A lot of them too are proprietary systems that may have been developed internally. The majority that we see of people managing this information is still either on SharePoint or in network folders. So we see that quite frequently.
Yeah, and Peter, I'll add to that. We see a lot of those similarities, right? Even organizations having specific individuals managing information on their desktop, and really what there's been, not necessarily a call from industry, but a real best practice is finding that an evolution of harmonious systems we see here is kind of one of those last bullets. As we see health authorities starting to adopt more structured formats in which industry needs to communicate their data back to them, it creates that need to really ensure that information's being seamlessly communicated, it's accessible by many organizations or many within the organization. So that need for a centralized point to store and consolidate that data becomes critical, you know, ensuring that the multiple members within, whether it be the regulatory kind of umbrella or those ancillary aspects that kind of feed back into that health authority communication, have access to that information, or more importantly, a method to communicate the information from that centralized point to then a whether it be a vendor system or another system that's being adopted internally. So some of those best practices when approaching that is really having a cross-functional group to mind map and understand where's the data used, where may it be used downstream. So, you know, when we look at our friends in industry that have been at this for decades, right? Companies have been established for some of them centuries, right? Or over a century. That data, it's huge data, huge amounts of information. And we even see, you know, from a clinical trials perspective, they could have studies that span, you know, years, and as well as many studies happening at the same time. But then those organizations that may have a new innovative drug, they're kind of at a point where, hey, you can really take a moment to look at this from a holistic level, that 500-foot view, and say, where are we and where's this information coming from? A lot of the impetus then for the more established organizations are things like IDMP, some of the shifts to different ISO standards, different industry standards to provide a more harmonious set of data sets. And you're really providing that type of gap analysis on what you're trying to achieve is one of those really, the risk really outweighs the reward outweighs the risk in that scenario of taking that moment to step back and look at it as an organization as a whole.
Okay. And David, are there any kind of common things you see between your clients that are keys or successful, kind of the keys to success for this, for information storage?
Yeah, we'll see it pretty frequently where there may be scenarios where an organization's looking to update a change to their content of labeling, we'll say, or they have an upcoming approval and they've gotten communication from the health authority, and it's time to now make that regulatory submission. And the tracking of the changes, it tends to be one of the more difficult aspects of that process. Ensuring that version to version of what we're creating is being maintained, and that you have a really good sense of what was in the previous submission we had, right, or what was in that drug listed label we sent to the agency, but then what are in all the various changes we've made since then for our different scenarios we have working.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah. So to give an example of this, I'll go ahead and share my screen momentarily.
Okay. Hang on a second. I got to make you the presenter there, David. Mm-hmm. There you go.
All right, wrong screen. There we are. Let me know once you can see that, Peter.
Yeah, I can. Perfect.
Great. So this is Navigator for Drug Labels. It's a label research tool we've created here at ReadTech. In just doing a simple search like COVID, right? A name search. You'll see there's some additional information in here that the results of the system. But really, what we're looking to focus in on are the specific examples of the EUA vaccines, right? So we'll see here we have the Moderna and Pfizer versions. So if I go into the first product that was approved with the emergency use authorization, we have many different versions that have been created over time. In fact, before the product was approved by EUA, it's a pretty basic label we're reviewing here. If we go into after that emergency use authorization, you'll see that the product then expands. The product label listing expands. There's a lot more content in here, which is to be expected. Right now, it's being commercially distributed for the pandemic purposes. And then going back to our search results, then kind of taking a look from almost a strategy perspective, looking at how Moderna has managed that process. We see there's only just a handful, right? Just 2 updates we've seen. This was that kind of same idea, that very basic label before the EUA approval, and now when we get into January 13th, 2021 version that hit Daily Med, a much more comprehensive review. So different strategies from different organizations. That's the point. Not every organization's managing this type of information the same way. Some may update information more frequently. Some may keep it relatively static until they have to make a change come the mid-year update. So Peter, I'll kick it back over to you here to kind of show from a content perspective that how an organization's viewing those changes.
Okay. So I believe you need to make me presenter again.
Yes. All right, and it's kicked on back over to you, Peter.
Perfect. Okay. There we go. I had to click on a message to get rid of the thing. So as we saw using the same example, there were some changes that were submitted. We want to be able to track, and that's what TVT helps you do, is track and find those changes between your two different documents, two different submissions. So we can see that that there's been some changes. We can go through and take a look at all those changes. Interestingly, this is one that's in the news right now. Is it 5 or 6 doses per vial? So you can see how just this little piece of information, change from 5 to 6 doses per vial, has an impact. Going back to that slide that we showed, where you have all that information coming in from different areas and going out to different areas. This is where we get into the change management end of things. Is how do you capture those changes? How do you first, define how you're going to change things, which is what David showed, how you're going to capture those changes, how you're going to find those changes, and what you're going to do with them after. So, the process is actually quite complex, and many users touch it. So it's good to have an overall understanding and a strategy for managing all those changes and how you're going to work with them internally, collaborate on it. David?
Yeah, and that was a great example, Peter. I mean, just seeing from one minor change to the next, it really details out, and then it really shows someone what's happened, right? Why did we do this? Well, that's exactly why. FDA is asking for this, or this health authority is asking for that, and all right, that was implemented. Great. Now, from those information management needs, today's needs, they're constantly evolving, right? So whether it's compliance, quality, the globalization of organizations, right? So in Moderna's scenario, their EUA is their first product to market, if you will. It's not necessarily approved, but they're going to be globalizing probably quite quickly and moving into health authorities that 2 years ago they may not have necessarily foreseen that quick of an adoption globally, and then the harmonization of the data, but not just the information we're managing. I kind of look at the harmonization as the harmonization of our systems. In looking at RIM as more of it's very rare that we'll find an end-to-end solution that can do it all, right? So really finding that harmonized group of systems, either internally built by vendors, or even some of the systems that the agents or the FDA or different health authorities have make accessible and viewable to industry. So a lot of that, what we find is when really looking at this from a higher level, whether it be the compliance side, knowing what we need to be doing, what we need to be sending to these health authorities. And then from the quality perspective, making sure we're tracking a lot of this, ensuring that the quality of our products, the quality of our submissions and so forth, being able to have things more buttoned up can really help. And so, Peter, we were talking kind of in preparation for a lot of this. Read Tech, we see a lot of the downstream information, right? What we provide is a very targeted solution, and it's a critical solution. TVT tends to be implemented across an organization more broadly. From your experience, what has been some of those best practices that really help organizations from kind of top to bottom here?
Mm-hmm. So I'll use artwork management as an example here. Not only so once you can get a handle on your internal processes and things like this, then you can also use that to leverage benefits externally as well. So for example, we have one client that does their comparisons. They take the TVT reports and they put it into a database system, actually SAP to be exact. And then what they do is they're running metrics inside of SAP. So they can see that supplier A returned 6% deviations in 10 days, whereas supplier B returned 10% deviations in 20 days. So then it becomes easier to kind of manage your overall processes in business by having that information centrally stored and reported on, and all those changes tracked, globally through multiple systems. So we see a lot of interesting applications like that from clients.
Yeah, and that the slide you presented earlier that kind of showed that labeling management, and it gets back to there's so many different ancillary pieces, whether it's managing the artwork, the core artwork, and then how it varies from health authority or even region to region. Same thing with labeling. And here in the States, it's a little easier, right? Reg Affairs has it a little easier where there's one common language. But as an organization globalizes and starts having products approved in different areas, or approaches the EU trying to get product approved there, that's when we start getting into multiple languages within multiple regions, and it just the complexity of that information expands, and then you're moving into, okay, now we need an accurate translation service that you may not have even thought of when we were looking at the how that might differ, or even French Canadian versus French in France, and the nuances to the languages there. Luckily, we don't have to do like Northeastern English versus Southern English, but
yeah, it's true. It's true. So then we get into change management. Some of the things you can look at here is to actually have a checklist and look at who's approving, who's changed. Do we capture everything? Tie that into your regulatory activities. Something that Reed actually says quite a bit is to have a single source of truth and agree who's owning it, but also who's got inputs to it. Again, from that first set of slides we saw, you get different pieces of information from different groups, and so you have different owners in a system. And as David pointed out, you have larger companies that have are still very siloed. We have Department A that really doesn't speak or interact with Department B. So breaking down those silos and getting people to communicate together, not only the systems communicating but the people communicating, we find it is a key to success. Makes things flow very, very much more easily. Smaller companies, you're kind of starting from the beginning, so you can take some of these things into account as you build and grow. So perhaps it's a little bit easier for smaller pharma companies than some of the legacy pharma companies. And then when you look at specific examples, just a simple change with Brexit, where the address of the marketing authorization holder changed or had to change, right? It had to move to mainland Europe. So just changing the address on all of your materials becomes quite a large change to manage, especially if you have multiple products, multiple dosages, etc.
Yeah, and even to expand on the changes within health authorities and regulatory responsibility. Brexit to UK is a perfect example, but right now what we're seeing with the implementation of unique device identification and globally, and that global concept of UDI, not every region's the same, right? Much like with the electronic drug registration and listing services at FDA, yeah, Health Canada's adopting something similar, but the EMA just recently announced, or they put some more final formal guidance together, but they've been targeting another health level 7 standard. So these standards of that final kind of output you're submitting then to agents, these health authorities, for these critical registrations could differ region to region, health authority to health authority. And having those harmonious systems to do so is critical. But then once something changes from one to the other, how are we managing that? And Peter, we were talking a bit about that the best practice. I think a small pharma scenario, it's very similar to, okay, yeah, we have approval now. We're going to start, the machine running. We're going to start getting new systems implemented. It's similar to when large pharma companies either merge or there's an acquisition, where now we have to take that step back to ensure, okay, how are we bringing these organizations together? One of the things we were talking about is, what do you see as that the best practice, the cleanest data then coming into that change management? Could you help kind of touch upon on that.
Yeah, so I think it's again from the first graphic, when we've got it centralized and we know we've done that mapping and we know what pieces of information are used where, then it becomes much easier for us to track down, which assets and which labels and which cartons, inserts need to be changed, which marketing ad promo materials need to be changed. So if you have that kind of central spider web understood and defined of where your information is used, then the ability to effectively manage those changes and push those changes across the organization and ensure that they're being changed correctly becomes much easier.
Yeah, so almost like a fine mix of systems and processes.
Correct. Yeah, I don't think you can have one without the other. And the technology is an enabler and it helps you do that. But at the core, it's defining your business processes correctly and understanding where the information is used. And then kind of going back to future proofing. If you have that in place, it makes it much easier for you to respond to changes, either market changes or health authority changes, new regulations that are coming out. That you can more easily respond to that because you've already got your internal procedures and systems buttoned down.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Peter.
No, go ahead, David.
Yeah. So really, when thinking of optimizing the process, it starts with who are the stakeholders and what are our technologies, right? Or what are those technologies we're looking to expand towards? Ensuring change management, ensuring that there's a way that we're managing this specific content, strategic content we're reviewing, and then implementing the management of all of that, and ultimately taking it back to the components we've mentioned, ensuring that the various stakeholders that are being affected by this have a seat at the table to ensure that this is a happy and harmonious wheel, with then happy and harmonious technologies to create what we like to call a happy regulatory family.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting, we would mostly, view those stakeholders as internal, but you can also look at your supply chains, like we were talking about before. I mean, agreeing with your supply chains on standards for things. So, this is the corporate font I'm going to use. This is the type of document and the formatting of the PDF, like it should be live text. We want to have it tagged correctly. So if we post it online and people that are visually impaired can read it. So there's the change in the content and the implementation management, but think of it also externally to your supply chains where you have information going in and out, artwork agencies, translation companies, consulting firms, etc. Think of those two as part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're coming to the end here. We've got about 3.5 minutes left. So there's many business benefits. We just kind of selected a few here to focus on. So obviously, if you're managing and tracking everything and doing that properly in terms of change management, you've obviously got faster time to market, and we know that's a key for originators. You've only got a certain amount of time on patent protection where you can take advantage of that, and even generics where you may not have patent protection, but the faster you can get new versions, flavors, dosage sizes, number of caplets into the market, the better it is. You're responding to market needs faster. Therefore, you'll be more profitable.
Yeah, and from the improved quality perspective, I mean, even from the lens we wear here at ReadTech, when we see the organizations that have very quality, the processes are in place, ensuring change management's in place, we see less back and forth, more accurate submissions, and that's the goal with all of this, is really implementing a process in harmonious systems to ensure we're improving quality, improving better outcomes, and then improving a better patient experience based on the products and that we're delivering.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, management theory 101, you can't improve anything unless you're measuring it. So if you have measurement and you're tracking metrics across all of your key systems and key processes, then you can identify ways to improve that importance, or sorry, improve the performance, not importance, but performance there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we see a microcosm of this in what we do, right? How to help our clients get to where they need to be faster without having to request that we process things within 24 hours, right? Really providing a snapshot of what we've provided them over time in helping them review, okay, here are the metrics we see. Now, here's where we believe it can be improved.
Good point.
Yeah, and a lot of this ultimately leads to happier employees, right, Peter? Yeah, I think personally, because ReadTech, we utilize TVT in our data preparation process, and if I put my lens on of our operations team, if I had to read through every single label and try to point out any discrepancies, I wouldn't be too happy, right?
Yeah, and we internally say, you know, we allow, you know, our users to sleep better at night. They don't have to worry that, you know, did they catch all the differences? Did they catch all the deviations? Were the changes made that were supposed to be made? You don't have to worry about that, because that's a real high risk scenario, and you know, so we like to say that we help our users sleep better at night. And so finally, in closing, you know, we did a very high level and quick overview of, you know, various topics. We had the idea that this potentially could spawn discussions or another webinar on different topics. So Kate, if you could launch the poll, we'd like to see if the audience is interested in, you know, seeing another webinar, perhaps on another topic here. You know, both Reed and Schlafender Hase, we work with a lot of different providers in the industry and other vendors that serve pharma and medical device. And, you know, we could always bring in guest speakers to help us, you know, and experts on these areas to help us provide some more education and information for you. So I believe the poll is up, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So you've got, we came up with 3 options, but we're always open to hear other ones. And so if one of your options is not there, please feel free to just enter a response in the chat, and we'll get to that.
And then to expand on that, any questions that you'd like to address? It was a pretty quick turnaround or time frame we had here, but any questions, also add them to the chat. We'd be happy to review them and provide feedback. Now, Peter, as far as the poll results go, about 29% of attendees would like interested in another webinar on artwork management systems, labeling management systems. 57% interested in data management for submissions to health authorities. 7% interested in change management, and another 7% have entered other responses in the chat. So yeah.
Okay, excellent. So good. Okay, there we go. So thank you, everyone. We did have some questions before the webinar, and I'm sure there's some questions following this webinar. So we will follow up with everyone and answer your questions directly. You know, on behalf of Schlafender Hase, I'd like to thank our friends and teammates, industry teammates at ReadTech. Always a pleasure, David.
And likewise, Peter. It's always great collaborating with the Schlafender Hase and industry leaders.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Sure.